Hello, everybody. This is the Film Formula Podcast, episode 2. Today, I am welcoming Jayson Johnson. He is an actor, filmmaker, and director, and I'm going to give him a warm introduction and let him explain his work, his career, and all his endeavors. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So, uh, first things first, I guess, how did you start in this field, and what initial things happened early on that led you down this path?
I think I always wanted to be a filmmaker, dating back to when I was a kid, watching soap operas and movies with my mom. So when the time came for me to go to college, I chose communications and radio and TV and film, and ended up getting a master's degree in corporate communication. After college, I came to California and got hired by Francis Ford Coppola at his winery, and I poured wine for a little bit, but eventually got a chance to work in his creative marketing team, where I was able to do more film stuff, such as like he has like a small film festival, and had some videos, and that kind of just grew from there.
Nice. So, when you were in those early stages in film school, what kind of things did you learn like what things did you learn that weren't exactly in the classroom? Like what things did you draw from outside the classroom that it can be a benefit to
Yeah,
go?
so it's interesting. Yeah, film school will teach you a lot about things in theory, but they won't necessarily teach you a lot about things in practice.
Hmm.
So when I got onto the film set, I learned that what I learned in film school was completely different. The hours are a lot longer than what you would expect. You're working at least 12 to 14 hours a day. Um, you start out at the bottom regardless of how much education you got. So I had to start out as a TA, even though I had a master's degree. So that was kind of an eye-opening thing. But for the most part, it's just I think you learn the majority of your film education on set, opposed to at film school. But I do think that film school has some important things that it can teach you.
Right. Me being a film student, I'm in my first year of film school and I'm learning more of the technical aspects. So I'm just trying to, find ways to stay ready when the time does come and I enter the workforce that I'll have, not only the technical skills but the in-field experience. So what steps can they take to start to gain that in-field experience before they graduate?
I would say, depending on what you want to do. So, like, if you want to be a director, then make a film. If you want to be a writer, then write a screenplay, and so forth and so on. And I wouldn't really worry about that you don't have the right equipment, you don't have the right camera. Just go ahead and start where you are. If you have a couple friends that that want to be actors, grab them. If you know that you have a location that you could film, use that. Just kind of reverse engineer, take all the assets that you have,
Right.
make a film out of what you got, and then from there, you're gonna gain practical experience, and then you could probably speed up the amount of time from when you're like on the bottom to to rise on the top once you do graduate. So I would say start now.
Definitely. When you did graduate and get that first job, um were you like eager to start in the field? Were some things about starting in the real workforce intimidating to you?
It was pretty intimidating to me because like here I am working for Francis Ford Coppola. I'd grown up watching his films, loving his films, and now he's there. So it's
Right.
like, oh snap, it's like
Hmm.
it's kind of like one of those surreal moments. But I think that you have to know your worth, and then you just have to just put yourself out there and really just don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and it's okay if you don't know what you're exactly doing, but on set, everyone likes someone that has a good attitude, that is willing to jump in wherever they can. And I've yet to see someone get shunned for that. It's
Mm,
all about having good people on set that are wanting to take the production as far as it can.
nice. So what was your first independent work that you did?
By myself
Not necessarily by yourself,
by
but like
or
when
with
someone first gave you the reins.
uh, I guess the first time that I got an opportunity to be a filmmaker for someone else, I worked at this small film production studio called Indigo Film. They did TV, and at that time I had already made probably about 4 or 5 like small film projects by myself, and
Hmm.
I just showed up on their doorstep with my resume, and I did my elevator pitch and asked them for a job, and
Hmm.
they actually gave me an opportunity to work on. Uh, I want to say the show was I Almost Got Away with It. It was like
Hmm.
a show about criminals on the run, and there was like a reenactment segment of the film, and there's interview segments that were part of the TV show. Uh, so yeah, I just got an opportunity to be a associate producer and just started learning about production management.
Nice. Um, Question I had, personally is being black in the film industry, were you cognizant of that going in that like you had to work any harder than anybody else, or did you just view it as you just had a dream and you wanted to pursue it?
I always I try not to let race enter into the arena of what I'm doing. I know that
Right.
it exists and that it's reality, but I always have been brought up to believe that if you work hard and you have something that you're passionate about, then the opportunities will just make themselves available to you.
Hmm.
So yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that, but I do believe that you have to be willing to work extremely hard. So maybe that plays into it. Just as a black man, we've all heard that it's another day on the plantation. We got to work twice as hard as the next person. But I think with anything, you should want to work as hard as you can, especially if you love it.
What were some of your favorite films growing up?
I'm a big film buff of like maybe the golden age of Hollywood. So I really like films like On the Waterfront is a favorite. Citizen Kane is a favorite. Um, jumping into like the 70s. Loved The Godfather. Loved Apocalypse Now. Loved Goodfellas. I really love gangster flicks. Those are just the creme de la creme for me. Um, and then like in the '90s, Beverly Hills Cop. Uh, I guess
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop 2. Boys in the Hood. Um, yeah, I can just go on and on. But yeah, it's just if it's a good film project that has good cinematography and dramatic elements, and I'm sold. I want to watch it.
Cool. When you're in the creative process and you're either writing or producing, what are some things that are of interest to you? Like what things do you want to stand out in your art and in your work?
I want my dialogue to be authentic. Um, that's one thing that's really important to me. I think we all watch film, and then it's almost like you can guess what they're going to say.
Hmm.
And I never want my film to be predictable like that. I want my film to have an element of realism. So I work really hard on the dialogue, and um, I'll even go out on the street and just listen to people talk because I want to be representative of how the dialogue is today, not necessarily uh, 10 years ago or 20 years ago if I'm writing
Right.
something that's, present time. So, that's really important to me. And um, then I just also want to make sure that, I have talent that represents, what talent would look like today as well. I really just want to drive home that something that's very authentic and something that is approachable to watch.
Nice. So I guess my next question would be, what are some things that you see in films today that I guess that you wish you would want to change, or like what change do you want to see in the new age of filmmaking?
Um, I want to preface it by saying I'm not misogynistic, but I
Right.
do think that a lot of the films that have like these exaggerated female narratives where you have like a 90-pound girl that throws a 500
Right.
pound man
Yeah.
across the room. I think that's a little bit ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I, so I would love to. I'm not against having female leads at all,
Mm-hmm.
but I do want to see that their character arc is well developed. I noticed that in films today, when in regards to men are always like these dumb guys that need to be directed and saved by a female, and uh, maybe that's true in some cases, but it just seems to be like a conveyor belt approach to a lot of these films that we're seeing today, especially with like Marvel.
Yeah.
And I do believe that's why they're failing right now. I think that's why Disney is failing as a whole right now because their
I agree.
films are not authentic to what filmmakers and what audiences want to see.
So you spoke earlier about the golden age of filmmaking and that era of gangster films and high quality dialogue, high quality, storylines and plots. Do you think there will be an era in the future where that's revived?
Oh, 100%. One thing that I pride myself on is I really love to study the industry of cinema. And so in the, I want to say in the 60s, there
Mm,
was this kind of push where, they did like all these over bloated films that, had like these massive budgets, um, themes that the audiences really didn't care about. So they had like this like, few years of just flops, like one film after another, just boom, 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 just flop. So then when the 70s came, the studios said, hey, we've got to change because, we can't just keep losing on these films.
mm,
So they took a chance on unknown film directors like Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese. Um, who's another one? I'm trying to think here. Brian De Palma. These are all unknown filmmakers that had small budgets that had worked with Roger Corman in some degree or another. And all these filmmakers knew how to make films on a shoestring budget. So when the film studios gave them a smaller budget and then they brought in like, these new, fresh, interesting ideas, they just knocked it out of the park. So that's when you saw like, Godfather come out. That's when you saw Star Wars and things like that. So
right.
I do think that we're going to get there because, right now we are making, Hollywood is making like these $150 million budgets, and
Mm,
they're not capitalizing or making any money on it. And we did see Barbie and we saw Oppenheimer have just $100 million, and then those went on to I want to say both of them hit $1 billion. So
right.
I do think that we will start to see more interesting things like that. Less superhero films, less sequels,
Remakes.
less DEI that are baked into the film.
Hmm.
I think that's coming.
Yeah, I agree. I hope we see an era where, you know, just directors maximizing their resources and not relying on all this CGI and all of these big budgets to make these movies that really aren't, making a profit at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah, they're 100% forgettable.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, definitely. So, how do you feel about remakes and how there is? I feel like now we're in the era of just taking old ideas and unoriginality and just remastering it, putting new actors in, it, and calling it a new movie. Um, what do you think is going to help that
I think
reconcile?
it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's a terrible idea. Yeah, it's like um, not to shit on LeBron, but he made House Party and then he made White Men Can't Jump,
yeah.
and I don't know anyone that saw that. Those films. And so
I
it's
didn't.
like, uh, I watched the trailer and of first House Party, and it didn't have any of the charm as the original.
Right,
They're the reason it's called House Party, and not House Party and all this extra shit.
mm,
It's and the remake had like koala bears in it. It had all these people in it, and it's just like,
right,
you don't necessarily have to go big with the remake. You can just make something that is well done, and people will appreciate it and they'll want to see it. So I think that's what happens with these remakes. They try to say, here's the 5 pound box. I'm going to stuff 10 pounds of shit into it. And
hmm.
then everyone's going to want to come see it. And nobody wants to see that.
So, you personally, what's your favorite project or work that you've done? Like a project that came out and you were like, man, this is really cool.
Uh, Me personally, I'll tell you something I personally did and something that I worked on.
Mhm.
Um, Something I personally did, the last film that we did was called Thought. My
Mhm.
friend had an idea about, you know, uh, brothers talking stuff in barbershops and, talking
Right,
about females. And out of that, like, creative session, we created like a hood love story out of that.
mhm.
And, it did pretty well on the festival circuit. And then we even got on the number one radio station in the Bay Area to talk
Right.
about it. So that was cool. And, I got to see that the progression of my filmmaking, because that definitely looked the best. We had the best colors. We had a great editor. We had great talent. We even had Adrian Marcel, who was nominated for a Grammy, in
Oh,
the project.
right.
So the arc of my filmmaking, I was really proud of that because it's definitely trending up instead of down, and that's what you want.
But yeah.
Um, yeah, and one of the better projects I worked on a project with Boots Riley. He did this film called Sorry to Bother You, and we filmed that in Oakland. It was a completely original script, and it had black people in the film as not as static black people, but as well written black people that had
Mhm.
something to offer, and
Right.
that's dear to my heart because I don't want to see another black film where we're just trying to get out the hood and just the
Mhm.
same old trope that we've seen a billion times.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest motivations to get into the industries, to develop the black voice and to just show it in a different light and a more, just a whole spectrum instead of one lane. Uh, can you speak more to that and how you would like to see the entire black spectrum on screen?
Absolutely. I would love to see black films, mirror classics like Pretty Woman or what's another film that's just think of like in the zeitgeist of of films, like a Back to the Future.
Mm,
And I'm not talking about taking Back to the Future and then just putting black people in it. I'm
mm,
talking about making something that's creative, that the characters happen to be black, and that the
right.
story happens to be believable, and it happens to be a great production value, and so forth and so on. So that's what I would love to see. I think that we can get there, but I would love to, if we could get away from that the setting has to be exaggerated, because I noticed with black films, it's either that we're super rich or we're super poor.
Yeah.
It's really not in the middle. So I would really like to just have something that's approachable to all audiences, not pretentious or not degrading in any way.
Yes, I completely agree. When it comes to the your future works, um, what are some stories or some themes that you would like to emphasize in your future work?
So I have a couple of films that are in development now. I have. I think I want to talk about. Trying to think of how to say this here. Well, I've written 3 film projects at 3 different price points. I've made 9. At this point, I've made 9 shorts by now, and I need to make a feature, so that's where I'm really putting a lot of my stock into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so uh, each film has a budget that matches the production. There's one at 50,000, there's one at 150,000, and there's one at $2 million. Um, the one at $50,000 is called Counterfeit Cabernets. It's about a wine vintner that gets in over his head when he's at a underground gambling ring, and he gets in trouble with the wrong gangster, and he has to pay up, or or his family's gonna be taken out.
Right.
So to get over that, he makes counterfeit wine to pay the tab. The second film is called Roger and Me. It's about an inspiring black computer programmer that goes to a hackathon. And while he does great, he falls asleep at the wheel and crashes into a tropical goldfish on a goldfish store on the way home.
Mm.
And the judge orders him to carry a GPS goldfish for 30 days. So the story is about him getting from one part of town to the next part of town while carrying his goldfish tank. So I thought that was kind of an interesting concept, and you can I want to kind of talk about the different classes in Richmond, California, and I think that I can use that as a vehicle to do that. And then the last project is called Drip Tape. It's about a Mexican skateboarder that finds out that his daughter has type 1 diabetes, and their Medicare gets cut off. So he turns to robbing banks and using a skateboard as a getaway.
Oh,
So
that sounds cool.
those are the stories that I have in the queue. Um, I think they're a lot different from one another, and
Hmm.
I pride myself on that. So I'm hoping to make one or all 3 of them very soon.
Yeah, I hope to see one of them or all of them. The one thing I like about those concepts is they're all relatable. They're all on the level of a human level that we can all relate to in one way or another. And I like films like that. I mean, I like sci-fi and I like fiction, but I also do like movies where you can actually find a connection and relate to a character or a plot. Because I mean, it just feels more of an immersive experience on screen, and it
Yeah.
it, it makes it for a really good movie if you dial it in. Um, I guess my next question would be for young filmmakers that are just entering this world. Um, did you grow up in California?
No, I grew up in Chicago, West Side Chicago suburbs.
Okay. My question was, I guess it's a two-part question. One, why did you move to California? And two, how important it is to be in California if you want to pursue this career?
I moved to California. I had a girlfriend in college. I wish I could
Mhm.
tell you it was like some
Right.
determined thing, but I had a girl that I followed out here. She had a job, and I needed a job, so I followed her out here. Um,
Right.
but living in California, you know, I think it's changing. I don't know I don't know if you necessarily need to live out here because um, you can always fly in for a meeting.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of filmmakers start their careers in like Michigan and just all over the place. Florida, um, California is great because it has it's sunny almost 9 months out of the year, so that allows you to film for a longer time. There's people out here that are in the industry, especially in Hollywood, but I'm not sold if you necessarily have to be here. I think it might help a little bit more, but with the power of the internet and just video
Yeah.
conferencing like what we're doing now, I think that you know the film industry has been made a lot smaller. So
Right. Speaking to that, how do you feel about the new era of how we watch movies? Be it via streaming or uh, being on your phone or on a Roku TV, or do you think that's taken away from the theater experience, or do you see it as a positive?
I've been thinking a lot about that actually because you know it's not like you're going to get someone to voluntarily put their phone down. The
Hmm.
average person looks at their phone like 200 times a day.
Right.
And when I first heard that, I was like, that sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
Just like so much. But, that is a habit that is ingrained into people. So I don't know if you want to necessarily change that, but, I'm thinking, is there a way to incentivize people by looking at their phone while consuming the content? Like, and I don't know if that would be augmented reality or something, or how the film connects with uh, the movie screen connects with the phone, etc. So I think that the technology sped way ahead of the industry, and now the
Hmm.
industry is like, well, how do we catch up? So I think that with anything, you have to have innovation, and if there is a way to innovate where you can integrate with both of them, then you can really bring in a lot of those viewers that look at those phones 200 times a day.
Right.
With that said, there's something very romantic about going to the silver screen and just watching, a film without picking up your phone, just letting it rest for 2 to 3 hours, and being immersed in that world. So, I would really, I hope that that doesn't go away completely because, that's what I think every filmmaker has to be romantic in some regards. So, I hope that that stays. But, you know, with streaming, I don't know. I think that maybe you have to figure out a way to do it better. And then I'll
Hmm.
also say one last thing. I'm sorry for the long-winded
No, you're
answer
fine.
on it. I just have a lot of feelings about it. But, I think Disney did themselves a big disservice by starting Disney Plus.
Hmm.
I think that when Disney Plus came out, it was, I want to say around 2019, 2020. And at that time, they were just killing it at the box office. Everything was $1 billion. So I think in their mind, they said, we will use Disney Plus and put IPs on there that are kind of like our junior varsity,
Right.
get people interested in those IPs on the Plus platform. And then by the time that, you know, we get them up to the silver screen, it's just another $1 billion.
Hmm.
And in theory, I guess that worked, but they just put out so much junk
Yeah.
that was, you know, just CGI heavy, no storyline, um, pandering crap that,
Yeah.
nobody wants to see. And so I would not be surprised if Disney goes away, Disney Plus goes away, or they drastically reduce the amount of content that they make on Disney Plus because everything they're making is just garbage right now. And at some point, the streaming wars have got to um, condense down into maybe a few because right now there's over 150 streaming uh, channels or networks, and only only three of them are making money.
Yeah.
Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon.
Wow, I didn't know that there were only three of them were really doing good.
Yeah,
But
all the
yeah,
rest are losing money.
and I can see why. I mean, it's kind of you're just going right back to cable. You're giving people all these options, but you're charging them. It's like they're charging you for each channel. So I mean, I don't know how that's going to work long term. Uh, but what something that comes on my mind a lot is because when I fell in love with movies at the silver screen in the theaters, so I'm just trying to. What I think about a lot is how these companies can revert back to the silver screen and using the streaming platforms not to pander to people to boost the morale of these IPs. Instead of doing that, use them as like how it used to be. You go to theaters, something's in theaters for a month and a half, and then it goes to DVD. I feel like they should use these platforms as kind of like the new DVD. Like once a movie's come out, then you can expect it on these streaming platforms maybe a month or two later. But it's like a movie will be out on a Friday and it'll be streaming by that Monday. So they're not even really
Yeah,
giving people a chance to go out and experience that movie on the silver screen and really fall in love with these new character storylines of movies. I'm just wondering what strategy they could take to get people going back outside, back in the theater.
I actually have an idea. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I'll share it with you.
Hmm.
So everyone is. It seems like today's society is really interested in reality TV, and I think it'd be interesting if you did like a reality making of the film. So you have like your casting, you have um, your pre-production, leading into production, and then your post-production. Because if you've ever worked on a film, there's just so much drama that happens on
Yeah.
it, and and for the most part, kind of shrouded in secrecy. You don't really
Hmm.
hear about it. You know that the film is in production. You might get a couple of screenshots here and there of what they're doing, but for the most part, you're not hearing about the day to day. So I think that would be an interesting way to publicize the film as a reality TV show. And then once that's over, then the film releases, and then it only releases exclusively in the movie theater.
Right.
So so in that time, you're and all the episodes will not be released at the same time. We go back
Right.
to the traditional model of week by week, and you're building an audience, and then when the film releases, you have this audience that watched the kind of the behind the scenes reality TV show, and hypothetically they would be interested in the film because they were interested in the behind the scenes.
I think that's really an idea. I mean, in terms of just the business aspect of it, you're basically profiting on the promotion of the film because you're making a show about making the film, so you don't have to spend advertising dollars to just come out with these 2 minute trailers. And people do love reality TV and drama, so I think that's an approach they should take. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't work. I mean, there's so many aspects to making a film. You could make a whole 12 episode season, 24 episode season of the creation of a movie, and it kind of
Yeah,
it keeps you invested in the idea over time. So I think that was a good idea.
yeah. Just I mean, you think about it. How many times you been on set when you see someone a screaming match? How many times you been on set where someone just you know they just up and quit? Like a PA
Yeah.
just up and quit, and you're just like, Where'd they go? So
Hmm.
and something goes wrong. That happens like almost every day. So there is a lot more drama in the film industry that they give themselves credit for. I think the problem with filmmakers are they consider themselves artists, which they are, but then they consider reality TV just mindless, just gunk,
Right.
which it can be. and they don't want to marry the two. But I don't think it
Hmm.
has to be, one or the other. It can be both. They can work in synchronicity with each other. Uh, but they have to innovate because what they're doing just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not, and I like that idea because it reminds me of kind of like when movies used to come out and the DVD came out, they used to come out with the director's cut, and the director would show you like different ways they made a scene or how they came up with the VFX for a scene or how they figured out this dialogue conflict. I think that's not only valuable to the consumer, it's probably really invaluable to filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, because you get to see the breakdown of movies and you get to see this process, which is usually, behind a veil. Um, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I hope they start doing something like that because whatever they're doing now isn't working, clearly.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna the feature film that I do. We're going to make our own little reality show, and I don't mind being filmed. I don't mind working with the actors and then turning to the behind the scenes and then telling them what I have to do. Some things you can't share, but you
Right.
don't want to give it all away. For the most part, there's enough that's there that can be interesting, and I think
Definitely.
people will watch it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Hopefully I get a chance to watch that because that's going to be interesting to see. And I guarantee you some big production studio is going to see that and be like, okay, this is probably the direction we need to go into.
Yeah, I should see if I can trademark that idea. I don't know, but anyway, I got lots of ideas.
Yeah. It's actually ironic I have you on today because later today I'm gonna go see American Fiction. Um, have you heard of that movie? The new movie came out.
Who's in that? Just refresh my memory, if you will.
Um, what is his name? His name is Anderson something. The dude that's on Blackish, the dad off of Blackish.
Oh, Anthony Anderson.
Yeah, Anthony Anderson.
Oh, okay. No,
So
I
yeah,
haven't
yeah,
heard of
yeah.
that one yet.
So basically, it's kind of about what we spoke on earlier. He's a screenwriter, and well, he's an author, and he wants to get his book turned into a movie. And his book is not really received how he wanted it to receive. It's about a black man, and he's like a tech geek, and he's like into alternative things that aren't usually seen on the silver screen for a black man to do. And so I guess he sees that these, basically black exploitation movies are the movies that are getting the dollars. Um, so he reverts and basically makes up this whole story about this dude in the hood that's like going on like a robbing spree, and he writes the he writes it in like 2 days. Like it took no brain effort to
Mm,
make it. It just went straight to the stereotypes, and he sells it, and he gets offered like more book deals. He gets offered $100 million movie budgets, and his whole life changes overnight over this like stereotypical idea he just came up with overnight. And I guess the movie, I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to see it today, but I'm guessing the movie is about his struggle wrestling with the fact that he wants to write deeper content and he doesn't really believe in this thing that he's profiting off of. But, you want more success, you want more money. So I guess it's about that conflict. I can't wait to see it, to be
yeah.
honest.
Huh. Yeah, I think that's a good concept. Um, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that too.
Yeah, it's called American Fiction. I think it just came out yesterday. Um, but yeah, that's
Hmm.
kind of like the overarching place I feel like we're at as a race of people in this industry is trying to make informative, um, depth-filled content that's not stereotypical, but it's kind of hard because that's what gets eaten up nowadays. Like power. BMF, um, all these shows like basically Wire remakes, you know, that are
Mm-hmm.
essentially just us all looking like savages on the screen. But I mean that if that's what sells, so it's kind of it just takes a brave and creative individual to kind of like try to keep hammering at it and trying to broaden the horizons of what we could look like on the screen.
I think there's an audience out there that wants to see it. It's like no, I don't think it's any mistake that you and I are talking about that because you
Mm,
know I think that I think that Black people thirst for something that is not us shooting and killing each other on the street.
mm.
Um, I think of like have you seen Moonlight at all with Barry
Yep,
Jenkins?
really good.
So that was fantastic.
Yeah,
It had some elements of the street, but it was widely a love story.
yeah,
And a love story that Black people aren't really comfortable talking about. Two men that are talking about their love. So I I think that there is a market for films like that, but I think the population has to be conditioned to watch those films.
yeah,
It's like if I set like a Coca Cola in front of someone, and then I set like a water in front of someone, they're going to gravitate towards that Coca Cola.
definitely.
But over time, if they learn that that's bad for you, and that it offers like no actual health benefits, then eventually they're going to start saying, "Oh, I want the water." And so I think we have to do that with the film industry as well.
Nice. I believe the same thing. So I guess I have one more concluded question for you. One, two-part question. One, who are some of your favorite actors? And two, who are some of your favorite directors?
I'm gonna go with the directors first because that's probably easier. So
Mm,
I'm probably a Christopher Nolan stan right now.
same.
But I love Federico Fellini, Coppola. Um, I am a big Brian De Palma fan. Let's see here. I have to put in Scorsese. I have to put in Spielberg. These are all just huge inspirations to me. Um, I know that maybe the audience wants me to say, well, what about Spike Lee? But I mean, some of his stuff's okay.
He's okay.
Um, yeah, it's just I'm just keeping it real. I just
Yeah,
there's directors that are just masters, and there's you watch their stuff and it's like, wow, fuck, that's incredible.
yeah.
And then there's some that you just say, that's cool. So I would say those are the directors I can think of. I'll add Quentin Tarantino to that as well. I really love
Yeah.
what he does. As far as actors, I think that all time, I got to I'll put Eddie Murphy on that list. I'll put, and this is probably a little more complicated for me, but I'll go with some of the greats. Say Martin Brando, Susan Sarandon's a favorite of mine. I'll say a big Denzel Washington fan, big Wesley Snipes fan, big uh, you know, this guy is you're probably gonna be like, what? But I love Dave Chappelle. I think he's a great actor. You watch
I do
him
too.
in A Star Was Born and just what he does and what he did in Chappelle's show. That's not easy.
No.
Comedy is not easy. I'm trying to think of maybe give you a few other ones. Mahershala Ali, I think, is a great actor. Yeah. Daniel Day Lewis, fantastic. Like wow. Would love to work with him. Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, great. Go.
Yeah, yeah. Tom Cruise. Go on and on. Robert Redford.
Yeah,
These are all great actors. So Stallone,
I agree.
Schwarzenegger. The one thing. And this is not a slight to any of the actors these days, but I do feel that we do not have movie stars anymore. Um,
I agree.
Tom Cruise might be the last movie star that we have, where it's like you go to a movie because Tom Cruise is in it.
Hmm.
There is like nowadays, there's people that they play Spider-Man, and they go see Tom Holland because he's Spider-Man. But
Yeah.
if he puts out another film, like let's say he does a drama about drinking in it, and he's Tom Holland, it's
Hmm.
probably going to flop because he's not
Yep.
a real movie star. So I'm hoping that when we get to this new renaissance of filmmaking and this film project, that there is a explosion of just new movie stars that come out of that. Not known for these overglossed IPs that are worth $200 million and are just half
Definitely.
CGI.
Speaking of that, and also speaking of Christopher Nolan, I also agree with this. There's not anyone we could point to like in my generation or anywhere near that's like a Tom Cruise or a Denzel. But one guy I do think may have the potential to become a movie star maybe later and as he ages is Denzel's son. Um, I liked his role that he played in Tenet. I think that was a great example of someone that's not riding the piggyback of like an IP and someone that's just giving you a great performance. Um,
Hmm.
Hopefully one day he can live up to half of what his father accomplished and try to, become the next movie star. But I think he may have a good chance of becoming that next like movie star where you go in to see the movie for the actor.
I'll agree because I saw Tenet too, and a lot of people were like, I didn't understand it, and that's a very valid point. But that's from a talent standpoint, that's a really hard movie to act in because
Yeah.
you're essentially doing everything in reverse.
Hmm.
And Christopher Nolan's films are not for they're not just superficial films. They require
Right.
you to think, and a lot of the audiences over I guess maybe the past decade and a half have gotten very lazy. You know, it's just
Yeah.
let blow me away with CGI and whatever. But yeah, so Tenet, I think that was a very tough film for him to play. I think he did a good job. He also did a good job in The Creator. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I
Keep
think he
seeing
did
it.
a fantastic.
I have to check it out. I keep
Yeah,
seeing it though.
that was an interesting project. Yeah,
I'm gonna check that out because I every time I open up Netflix, I see it on the front page. So,
what's interesting about that project is they shot that on a $5,000 camera.
oh really?
They said so they they kind of bucked the studio system where you have to have like where you're shooting on film or one of these ARRI cameras,
Yeah,
and then
Ari. Yeah,
yeah, the post production is just this long drawn thing. So yeah, they shot on this camera. It looked beautiful, yeah, and there's a lot of practical stunts and effects in it. Very little CGI, which is fantastic. And I think it's for a completely original IP, I think they did a pretty good job.
I'm always interested in new movies because I mean, I'm always watching old movies. All my inspirations come from older directors and older films, so I'm always eager to see something creative and new. So I'll definitely check that out. What's your favorite Nolan movie?
Um, I'd have to say it's probably maybe Dark Knight Rises or Interstellar.
Yeah,
No, let me take that back. Not Interstellar. Now I'm drawing a blank. What's the one where the dreaming Inception?
Inception.
Maybe
Yeah, that's my
Inception.
favorite movie actually.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Oppenheimer. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, for a movie that's essentially about dudes in a room talking about making something,
Yeah,
it's just it's pretty damn amazing, you know. It's like, you know, the idea that he could make that into a blockbuster and release that
yeah,
ahead with Barbie and uh, relatively go toe to toe. That's that just shows how good of a filmmaker he is.
yeah. I
So
mean, I agree completely. Oppenheimer's my
yeah,
favorite movie of last year for sure. Um, yeah, and Inception's my favorite movie. That's the movie that got me interested in making movies because that's the movie I first watched like more than 5 times. I watched that movie probably 50 times because I just could not understand it, and the more I would watch it, the more I would understand little small things. And that style of filmmaking, the non-linear storytelling, and just the fact that he doesn't use a lot of CGI, but if he's going to use special effects, he uses it in such a practical way that it doesn't take you out of the movie. That's the kind of filmmaking that got me into it. So yeah, Inception is like an all-time grail for me.
um,
And yeah,
when I learned how they made the fight scene where you know they're who is it the two guys are fighting and the room is
Jason
spinning.
Levitt.
Yeah, um, they made this so they had like this huge spinning room, and
Wow.
so the room was actually spinning, uh, and that's how they filmed it, and it was just like that's pretty amazing, man. You know, I would love to do
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, just the gall to make a room that's actually spinning instead of just putting your camera on a dolly and spinning the camera and adding all these effects. Like it just shows how much he really cares about the authenticity of what's on the screen. And I heard that I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard Nolan doesn't use monitors when he's directing. I heard he literally
Oh,
just looks at the scene like in
hmm.
the 3D space and makes calls on angles and different shots and different uh, scenes and different lenses based on what he sees in the actual space, which is like I don't even know how he does that.
Oh wow. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting because every film he's made at every price point, starting from his first film Following, um,
Mm,
you know, I think he made that for $14,000,
wow.
um, or 14,000 pounds because he made it in England. But yeah, it's great, and that's on YouTube if you want to see it. Um,
Yeah, I gotta check. That's the only Nolan movie
it's
I haven't seen. Yeah.
yeah, that's fantastic. And then even his short film, he has this short film called Doodlebug that's on
Hmm.
YouTube,
All right.
and you know it has that has like it's like a science fiction film where he's trying to crush this bug, but he finds that that bug is a smaller version of himself.
Mm,
So kind of a
wow.
weird concept, but yeah,
Interesting.
that's worth a look, and it's like a couple minutes. So yeah, it's really cool. I just really dig into the filmmaking, just, you know, the approach and the effort they put into this project. I just find it really inspiring.
Yeah, that sounds actually interesting, fascinating. One of my favorites he did was Memento. Uh, just that concept. I still have to keep watching it to understand. I still haven't even fully understood it, but it's like the way he manipulates time in his movies is like it's so him, and like I don't see any other director even attempt to try to make a movie like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Speaking of
totally
that,
agree.
like when it comes to directing styles, what would you say is your style or something that is your voice directorial wise?
That's a good question. I like a lot of handheld. I want to try to get that energy into the screen. I do like to show close up because I want the audience to try to get into the mind of the protagonist or the antagonist. I want to give the audience a lot of credit, and I I don't want to dumb things down for them, so I try to go as light on the exposition as I can, um,
Right.
and give the audience credit for being thoughtful, intelligent people that can figure it out. Um, and then uh, I'm trying to implement what I saw what Coppola and Breaking Bad producers have done. The director team had did when they made Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, which they all the colors have symbolism. Um,
Hmm.
so like if something is going to happen, then you'll subsequently see a certain color that um, is a connector to is like a precursor to what's going to happen. So
Okay.
like an example of that is like have you seen The Departed?
Yeah, definitely.
Which was crazy. So every time someone was going to get killed, there was red in the shot right before.
Oh, wow.
It could be someone who's wearing a red shirt, or there's like a candy cane that was red on the. But there's something that's red that indicates that someone's about to get whacked in The Departed. Um, and in The Godfather, the same thing, except it was orange.
Oh,
So
wow.
when Vito Corleone gets shot, he's at the market and he's picking up an orange, and then the gunmen come in and shoot him. So I want to try to see if we can implement these these little subtle touches that make the film that much more of a refined project. So just hoping to get
Wow.
better.
Yeah. Um, so I guess that's all I had to ask. Where can the people find you, your work, and follow you along your journey?
Yeah, you can either Google me at this point. You can Google me. My name is spelled Jayson Johnson. Maybe filmmaker, or alternatively, you can Google Strike Five Films, and you should have a good amount of stuff that pops up. Oh yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for the experience of your platform, and I hope to see you out making some great films.
Same as well. Hopefully we can talk again in the future about more filmmaking and more movie stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, you have my contact, so let me know.
Sure thing, man. Have a great year.
You too.